is turned off though. Oh, I gotta check to see if anybody signed up.
Good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock. I am Sue Hodgen, the chair of the Southport Planning Board, and I am calling our February 2024 meeting to order. I ask that everyone please silence or turn off your cell phones. I'll note for the record that member Kevin Lachlan is on by phone tonight while traveling, and member Donnie Joyner is also on remotely recuperating from a medical procedure today. Let's start, please, by removing any hats, and those who can and will, please stand while Board Member Scott Jones offers our invocation, and we'll follow with our allegiance to country and flag. Okay, moving with our agenda now. Item D is the approval of our minutes. Members were issued these minutes of the January 18th meeting in advance. Are there any changes or corrections? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the January minutes as prepared?
So moved.
Thank you, Will. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dick. Motion to approve is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item E is the approval of tonight's agenda. You were issued this evening's agenda also in advance of the meeting. Are there any additions or corrections?
I would like to introduce a new topic with a possible rezoning.
So do you want to put this under new business then?
Yes.
And rezoning of what area, so we can have that for the agenda?
I don't know the parcel IDs, but it's the gateway to the city, the entrance corridor. The two properties in particular are Famous Pizza and the Bald Head Island Peninsula on the opposite side.
All right, thank you. We'll put that under item number 2, under H, new business. With that addition, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda for the evening?
So moved.
Thank you, Will, and a second? Thank you, Dick. There is a motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item F is public comment. Do I hear a motion to move into public comment?
So moved.
Thank you, Will. And a second? Second. Thank you, Dick, again. Motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion does pass unanimously. Madam Deputy Clerk, please call names.
There is nobody signed up.
Nobody wants to talk to us. Is there anyone in the room tonight that did not sign up that would want to address the board? All right. Do I hear a motion then that we end public comment?
So moved.
Thank you, Will and Donnie. I'll put you down as the second. Thank you, sir. Motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item G, old business. Item 1 is the Southport Local Historic District Design Standards.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Board. As you remember, at your last meeting, Chair Drew outlined the timeline of the establishment of the Historic Preservation Commission and the goals and objectives of the commission itself. So the historic preservation goals were kept simple, the 3 Ps they would call it, and it's preserve, promote, and prevent. So they want to preserve the character, heritage, and landmarks, promote citizen outreach and education, and prevent the loss of character and historically significant places and structures. The goals and objectives of the commission will be met through the adoption of the design standards and the establishment of the certificate of appropriateness process. So the design standards that you have before you this evening were put together by the commission over the last year. And 160G of the general statute states that until the adoption of these design standards, there's no enforcement within a local historic district. These standards would apply to all new construction, any additions, alterations, movement, demolition of any structures, and it would require a certificate of appropriateness for all minor and major works throughout the local district. So some things to remember about the design standards that are of importance, that it's each certificate of appropriateness is considered individually and by the block. So it is not, there's not an established, it's not established for the whole, once there's a decision made, it doesn't go towards all. It's kind of like a variance. And it's a quasi-judicial decision. They do not regulate paint colors. They do allow some composite materials such as hardy plank. They do allow metal roofs, and they do not require retrofitting or after-the-fact preservation once these will become part of the district. So at this time, I will open up for discussion. Unfortunately, we don't have a large group from our Preservation Commission. We have Josh Clemage and Joanne Wesson are here to answer any questions you have. Or if there's any questions you have of me, I'm happy to help as well. So the next steps are, if there are any questions or if there's any further review that you would like to have with these standards, that's absolutely appropriate. Or if you feel comfortable, you are able to make a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen as you would for any other text amendment. Then they would hold a public hearing prior to a decision at that level. So I will open the floor up for your discussion with any questions.
either one of the folks from the commission, do y'all want to make any comments, or you're perfectly welcome to do that? It's okay. It's not on.
On switch on. I'm Josh Klein McGee with Joanne here. We're really here just to answer any questions you might have. We spent well over a year going through all of these things, and so whatever questions you have, then that would be great.
What questions do members have for these fine folks?
I'm curious about the issue with the metal roofs, because I know that my grandmother's house was on the corner of West and Lord, and that actually was the first Presbyterian parsonage. It's been remodeled since then, but it always had a metal roof, and it 100 years old. So I'm just curious why the metal roofs you're putting a not to allow. Oh, you do? Oh, oh, you are? Okay. Oh, okay. I thought I saw it up there. Do not. Okay, good.
Anyone else?
I got the metal roof, the types of roof. I believe the roof that is there, if it's a prominent structure, the roof cannot be changed. If it's shingles, it stays shingles. If it's metal, it stays metal. That's what I think I got out of that. Is that right? Go ahead. Roofs. Yeah, roofs.
I think those are some of the things that we struggled with, because what we were trying to do was to keep everything like it was as much as possible. If it had a metal roof to begin with, then go back to it. If it was shingles, fine. We looked at design standards from Beaufort, Wilmington, Aberdeen, North Carolina, even went to Mount Airy, North Carolina, look at their standards. So what we tried to do was make it economically possible to keep, what we have, but not to make it a financial burden on that homeowner. So, because knowing that, and Josh can speak to this more than I can, because of building materials and, everything now. And we know that people are going to do the best they can in the circumstances. So the windows was another big thing that we had to struggle with, because, composite there. I just had my house done. I'm not in the historic district. I'm just on the edge of it. But I've had wood windows. My house is 30-some years old. We have to caulk them every year. So so now we've gone with Window World or Pella, and I've got the composite. But from the street, and this is what we came up with, from the street, it looks like wood. So that's the only thing the commission is trying to do. Just keep the look as close as we can to what, the historic, the nature of the property.
I think that at least the intent of the guidelines is that we would prefer to see that everything stays as it was. But if the applicant has a reason for changing it for some reason, and they can bring that in front of the commission and explain why, then we could approve a change. So.
And there is a review committee. That always can appeal or go to the review committee with any questions. So.
I got a question on, it says the Preservation Committee has 180 days to review all applications. Is that, if somebody applies to do whatever work, the committee would have up to 180 days to review it? Is that true? Is that what I'm reading here? I'm on
Is that correct,
page
Ma'am?
17, top of the page.
That gives the commission the ability, if there's something that has to go to the state for review, because a lot of times if they're trying to go for a certain landmark designation, or it is a property that needs, or a change that the state historic preservation office needs to review, then we have to send it to them for comment. And then their comments would go back to the commission. So that gives them enough time to provide those comments from the state if necessary.
Just 6 months seems to be, somebody wants to start a project and to even get, before they can even apply for a building permit, that's going to be 6 months. That seems excessive to me.
I believe that's going to be the exception, not the norm. I mean, of course, we want to be able to allow people to get their projects moving. And like I said, it's really going to be something that's extreme if someone's trying to demolish a project, to make sure that it is appropriate for that type of demolition rather, sorry. But also like moving a property, making sure that there's a space and a place for a property to be moved. And historically, within Southport, movement of properties is very appropriate and has been happening all through the ages. So that too gives it some time for the commission to have ability to review it.
So the 9 individuals that are currently on the committee, they're going to be the HPC moving forward, correct?
It's like any board, there are term limits, so they'll have interviews and changes as any other board, like the Board of Adjustment, Planning Board, likewise, any committee in the city.
I have a couple comments. So generally, I'm very much in favor of the local historic district. I think it's long overdue. I think Southport is eroded because there's not anything to protect it. On the flip side, I am a builder that specializes in renovating historic structures. That's pretty much all I do. I'm very sensitive to the history and the architecture. I try to honor that. As an architect would know, you are sort of between a rock and a hard place with what the owner wants, and the owner has a different definition of what a good thing is, so this can keep that locked down. But the way I read this document, it's more leaning towards restoration, meaning wood is wood, keep it that way, don't add another window, and those kind of things. But some of the projects I've worked on, there were limited windows back in 1890, and if somebody wants more light or wants more view of the river, that seems to be a justifiable thing. I know it's stepping away from the original character. It's like a vintage car kind of thing. You try to keep it original to honor that instead of turning it into something it's not. But my only concern is I don't think I can actually say I've ever restored a house in Southport. I've had clients, and against my recommendations, somebody wants to put gingerbread on their house. And as a builder, I tell them, my guys will stick it up there, but if anybody asks, I had nothing to do with it. And so people mean well, but I appreciate this document. I would love to be able to hardy side the front of a house if it made sense to do that. With the same reveal, the character can be there. I know that the typical hardy siding is only 3/8 of an inch thick, and it's a different shadow line. It also, it follows, if there's any rippling in the framing, it's going to follow that. Based on my experience, when somebody uses smooth 3/8 inch hardy siding, it follows that, and you can see it, the way the light dances on that surface. But with cedar mill, that doesn't happen as bad. And so hardy is also available in twice that thickness, but it's twice the money. Probably your average homeowner's not going to want to use the double thickness hardy because of the financial factor, but I support this document, but I just have a little bit of caution with what it might mean. And in some cases, extreme cases, it could be hardship for somebody that can't afford wood siding or wood windows. If they're trying to find wood windows, it's even hard to find wood window manufacturers now. That there used to be a lot of choices, and then the cheap choices are not cheap anymore. So it's interesting, but I do genuinely support this, and I think we need it. And I guess the hardship part could be case by case, and I think that's about all I have to add. Thank you.
The 19 pages that are in here, a lot of the ordinances, where did all that language come from? Was that written from the ground up, or was that sort of copy and pasted from different other UDOs from municipalities?
I'm sorry, what were you, which pages were you talking about?
Essentially all the different ordinances that are in here. So if I were to start on, say, page 14, where it says roof standards, and then it goes into retain historic rooftop features such as ornamental eaves. Essentially, all of the design standards that are here, where do they come from?
I'll take a shot at that. We did, like I said, we spent 12 months or so going through different documents on this. We did look at a number of guidelines. We looked at Beaufort, we looked at Wilmington, we looked at Asheville, we looked at just a number of them, and we tried to pull in things that we thought were relevant to Southport. And if we haven't cleaned up all the numbers on it, I apologize, for that. But anyway, we were trying to bring in what we thought was appropriate from other guidelines, but we didn't copy anything verbatim. It was really sort of a pick and choose type of thing. Can I go back to Fred's point for just a minute and talk about that, about the guidelines as well? We've been through a number of public hearings, and a lot of people have addressed concerns about whether we use hardy siding, whether we use, true divided light windows and things like that. And I think that what the commission pretty much agreed on was that, whereas, I'm an architect, so I'm more of a purist, and I would prefer to see that, but we also realize that what's important is we're trying to preserve the look from the street and the character and the height and the size and the width and the amount of its impact on the lot. So I think after a series of public meetings, we decided that hardy siding would be allowed. Yeah, we did. We did. But the idea is for the profile to match as closely as possible what you would see with cedar or with some other appropriate wood. Likewise with the metal roofs, you know, the type of interlocking roofs that were around 200 years ago, they don't really make those that much anymore. So we will look at different profiles, but again, the idea is what it looks like from the street. What we're trying to avoid, in all honesty, is we don't want somebody to go in there and build a house that looks like it should belong in Miami, right? We're trying to preserve the character rather than get too much into the weeds with the restoration, although I realize we have done that a lot. So and as far as the windows are concerned, the consensus of and Joanne, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm talking a lot here, but I think the consensus of the commission was that if you provide windows that have grille patterns that are very similar to true divided lights and what you would have seen, 200 years ago, we are in all likelihood going to approve that, just because of the cost. And again, we're looking for if you've got an 8/8 type of window, we want to see an 8/8 go back rather than a full width commercial type glazing type unit. So it's really more about, for us, it's more about the look and preserving the character and the feel. So I'll shut up. So
Preserving the character is good.
The reason I ask about where this came from, a lot of the language in here is very subjective, and obviously the UDO is regulations, measurable. And I look at a lot of things in here and I think, when possible, or rather than, there are just a lot of subjective words here. So I just wonder, as somebody coming into this, reading it, it's this, well, try to do this, but if you can't, maybe this, and if this is okay, then how about this? I think a suggestion might be to go back through this and try to make things more definitive. And I just didn't know if, maybe this is a Mo question, but if an applicant tries to get the COA, provides all the documentation, and then it comes back and it gets denied, and then they quote specific parts of essentially the UDO, right? And if a lot of that language is subjective, then I just don't know how there's a lot of ground to stand on.
With a quasi-judicial findings of fact, you have to give very specific reasonings. So they may be able to cite a standard, but then they'd have to give concrete evidence supporting the decision that they would give, either it being a positive or a negative. So that's the difference, so that is giving it some leeway so people have the ability to find something that fits into the neighborhood feel, but may not be exactly the true historical, with, that's where they are able to give that leeway. But then again, giving the concrete, that it is the same, height, the same profile, so there's more to it than just, it has to be this, our way or the highway. Kind of like this. Yes, it is totally different than the UDO, you're right.
I think if there are certain sections in there that really bother you, we can look at those, but we need to have some latitude for some subjectivity in this, I believe, as a commission, because for an example, somebody, I'm sure, is going to take an existing house and do an addition to it, and you don't know how to definitively say yes or no for everything for an addition until you see the design. So we have to have some latitude in there. I just don't see, how you can not allow us to do that.
From the character aspect, so a lot of the houses I run into do not have the original front door anymore. And I know what they typically would have looked like in that time period. But now they've got a 6-panel pine slab door that's been there since 1958. If a client wants to put in a non-antique door that you can buy at Builder's First Source, that's a 2/3 light door with the correct grill pattern, is that sort of thing likely to be approved?
I would say yes. I would say yes, in all likelihood, yes.
Any other comments, Chris?
The subjective thing is really interesting because when I think of UDO, I think of regulations, rules, right? Things that are very measurable. And so it seems like our job as a planning board, when somebody submits something, does it fit to what the UDO is saying? And for the most part, staff does the majority of that work for us, and then we ask a lot of follow-up questions. Using Fred's as an example, does this door work? And the answer is it should work, or it should be approved. It's an interesting conversation. I don't lean one way or the other, but it does not bother me. I wouldn't use that word or characterize it. I read through all of this and thought it's very subjective. It's a lot different than what I've read the UDO as, which is more measurable. Just an observation more than anything, but.
I think we would certainly incorporate whatever suggestions the planning board has. I would like for you to identify specifically the phrases that bother you for us to take a look at. Because we've been through this for, a very long time. And, but if there's something that's objectionable, please bring it to us. Our whole goal in this thing is to get, the Historic Preservation Commission has failed twice in the past. And our goal is to get this thing approved in some format before we start losing more houses, and more of our character. So certainly open to suggestions, but just, tell us what your thoughts are.
In your ordinance, as it is here in this document, there's the sign guidelines. Currently, the planning board is working on reviewing the sign ordinance for the whole town, and then it does apply to the historic area as well. There's some overlap, and I think that the overlap part probably should be taken out of your document and pointed to our document.
I would agree with that, yep.
I would agree too that we need to make sure that they blend well. I mean, that's the point of this whole thing, is to make sure that everything's blending well to Chris's point and somewhat to Fred's too. The difference for me in looking through these is that these are guidelines, general guidelines, rather than specific concrete ordinance, nail somebody to the wall over it. These are guidelines instead, so the subjectivity would remain for the commission to be able to go through and make that decision. Thank goodness, not us.
Right. The other reason and Charles and I have talked about this, the other reason that we're approaching it this way is because this is all very new, and we want to give it a little bit of liquid motion right now. As we go along and cases come up and we determine that there are specifics that we want to avoid or we want to include, that it's a living, breathing document, and we can make changes to it.
And that was going to be my point in this too. But again, to Chris's point and Fred's about the door, there's an appeals process in all of this, right? If the commission does not, if that folks don't get the answer that they want, there's always a plan B, an appeals process in place to be able to handle that. So yep. I think that would address that. I would say that I'm very encouraged by what I've read here. We've needed this for a very long time in Southport. We identify preservation of our historic character, our heritage, as our very most important core value in this city. Now that we're finally putting some walk to the talk that we've had for so long. And so I'd say that we've had a historic district designation since the 1980s when that was put in place. So we're far past the period that we should have had this commission and all of these standards in place. So I think it's a very good starting point, and I appreciate y'all being willing to come and talk to us this evening and to hear concerns. We're lucky to have y'all as volunteer citizens for the city, for the commission, and have so many that have preservation backgrounds already. Mo, how should we handle this at this point? If there are specific things that board members would like to see addressed, should we email you with those?
Yes, if you'd like to email me any comments or concerns or questions, I can compile those and send them back to the commission, and they can review it at their next regular meeting.
And now, along those same lines, because I'm sure there'll be other questions and comments that keep going as things keep progressing in this, is that something that would stop us from taking action to direct you to get this ready for the Board of Aldermen then?
I believe if you recommended approval but I think that if you recommended approval, we needed to have some concrete questions that needed to be answered rather than having us compile them and take it to the meeting. So I think that if you would like to make a recommendation, then have the questions ready that we could have answered, and then send those with those changes or requested answers to the Board of Aldermen.
Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have a list of the areas that were most concerning to you?
I think you phrased it well when you said guidelines, but essentially this is going to live in the UDO, correct? No.
It's a separate document.
Okay.
Madam Chairman.
Donnie, you're good.
Donnie, go ahead.
Madam Chairman, I apologize. I do have a question about if we vote on this tonight, because I know I'm familiar with some of the historical districts, not necessarily in Southport, because I used to sell windows and doors at Home Depot, and we had quite a few problems with that. Are we voting tonight to send this on to the alderman? Or I remember hearing you say that we could send in comments, because I've been looking this over, but I need a little more time, and I'll be glad to send in my comments, because this is important. And right now, I believe, as Fred said, I don't want to misquote him because the audio doesn't come out that well sometimes. There are some houses right now that would probably violate some of the conditions inside here, especially with the fiberglass, and some with the Hardy and others. Will we have that time to send in these comments before it's sent to the alderman?
We're not under obligation to move this tonight. If we want to table this and bring it back next month and look at the questions, or if there are concrete things that we want to suggest to the commission from there, we're under no obligation, Donnie, to take a vote on this tonight.
What I was thinking is I wanted to get a chance to write up some of the things that I ran into selling to historic districts, and some of the information in here apply to that, and see if we can give them something when we do send it to them, is something that's concrete and will stand, because I know that they're probably under the gun with some homeowners, because it was the same way in the Wilmington district. When people already had like particular things in their homes, they didn't want to have to come back out there and replace a door. And I noticed the low E comments in there and some of the others, because the historical homes, as we all know, a lot of them were not all that energy efficient. So I would like a little more time to get my comments in.
So we're not talking about going back and mandating changes to houses that have been renovated already. So I think that's part of what Donnie's getting at. So going forward, you know, this may not be a perfect document, but it can be massaged and changed in the future, just like the tree ordinance. We worked really hard to get that. It was long overdue. We were afraid the aldermen were not going to pass it because there would be comments like there'd be too much overhead and enforcing the ordinance and things like that, and it hasn't worked out that way at all. But the tree ordinance continues to evolve as appropriate, and if there's things in here that are too stringent, ridiculous, it will probably be learned to relax some of the guidelines as needed. So I would encourage to not be so strict on it to be perfect.
I agree. These are not cast in stone, just like the UDO is not cast in stone. We evolve as we continue to look at best practices and, you know, learning from our own city and from other municipalities too. So we're looking at these guidelines. It'll mean advising and revising as we go along, but we have to start somewhere on it. If we can, Mo, I want to get guidance again now. We're not required to do anything tonight. We can just ask that members get the information to you. We don't even, do we need to take a vote to table this conversation or just get the information to you to compile for the commission?
It can just be continued till next month, and their first meeting is the first Wednesday of each month, and I'm sorry, I don't have that date off the top of my head. I want to say it's March 4th, possibly. So if I could have those comments at least a week ahead of time to be able to get those forwarded to them.
Full disclaimer, I don't have any suggestions. It was more of an observation of the subjectiveness of it. But now understanding that it's not part of the UDO, it's more guidelines, I almost want to retract everything I said before.
So Donnie, you got that deadline, you got your homework assignment to get any comments back into Mo for her to get to the commission, correct? We'll let that roll and we'll get that information to Donnie so that he can move ahead with that then in that time frame. Thank y'all so much. We appreciate you being with us, and Mo, we appreciate your work on this on our behalf. We'll move on to item 3, the text amendment concerning setback exceptions and encroachments. We'll move folks to page 44 in your packets. Before we start this, while Mo's getting ready for all that, I want to refer to a comment by Alderman Spencer this past Thursday. He asked the applicant for this amendment more than once, how many times have you been to meetings to compromise with these people? That was at the 3-hour and 19-minute mark. If you'd like to hear that for yourself, it's on the city website or the YouTube channel for the city. I want to make it clear to our members and to the public that this planning board does not compromise with applicants. Our job is to apply ordinance to applications, to suggested text amendments in consideration of the betterment for the entire city, not one applicant. I want to make it clear that we do not cut deals for applicants. Now, Mo, can you recap, please, our last discussion where we recommended denying the amendment as submitted and unable to reach a consensus on some things? We sent it on to the Board of Aldermen to take up the discussion. They punted it back, and I can't really say I blame them.
Yes, so to reiterate, this setback exception encroachment text amendment was requested by an applicant, Cameron Smith, and was sent back to the planning board at the request of the Board of Aldermen. So the option that was considered after several meetings with the planning board that went to the Board of Aldermen was removing heating and air conditioning from the 30-inch encroachment that exists currently and add a statement that says heating and air conditioning units, generators, pool equipment, and similar items may project 42 inches into the required setback, but not closer than 24 inches from the lot line. So that was one of the options that the planning board had considered and then eventually went and requested just denial of it. So I really just wanted to have a discussion this evening. I knew that we were gonna need to kind of have some ideas of where you would like to have these things go. So, as you know, you recommended denial. They held the duly advertised public hearing and brought it back to the planning board. So the questions are, do you want to send it back with a denial? You can consider the same options that I had brought forward. There were 4 options I had brought previously with some new information, some new documentation, some new photographs that may show some different things. Or are there some different options, some new options that you would like to consider that I bring back with the supporting documentation as well? So I wanted to just leave it there because I wanted to get it back so that it wasn't sitting, and keep this moving so we can have some closure with it eventually. So I would like to just ask that how you would like me to move forward with the language.
I think before the planning board expends any more energy on this, that there's a definitive clarification from the fire department. I've heard yes and no about 2 feet. Initially, the fire marshal reviewed the text amendment, and my understanding 2 feet was fine. At the last alderman meeting, it was brought out and questioned the fire chief about 2 feet, and I believe his response was like, no, that's not enough. Though I think that's going to impact our discussion.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I was at the meeting, and that was a consideration, was the 24 inches. And one thing I can say is that it might be fine when you're walking through there at 24 inches, but when you're in turnout gear, you got a Scott Air Pack on and a helmet, or if you're an EMT and you're dragging a gurney along trying to get to the back of a house, that's why they make doors in houses 36 inches, because you can get through it. And that's the consideration we're going to have to take, is at 36 inches. Now, the only other thing that I could think of, and this is just throwing it out there, is if there was something that went over the top, it was a step up and went over the top of whatever's underneath and then down, and then that could allow passage through the house, to the side of the house. That's the only other way, that's the only other way, instead of having to shimmy and go, because if you're, like some of your diagrams come up with, there's a pool filter here, there's a generator here, there's a fuel tank here. Well, if you're trying to weave through that with a fire hose, you can't do it. But if it's all underneath of a decking, you could go over the top of the decking, drag it across, and you're unencumbered that way. That would be the only way in close quarters to get around that. But I mean, I'm just trying to think outside the box from some of the stuff I've seen where people, and the other part of that too is, though, it needs to be ventilated, because that's the first thing they're going to ask. Is it, that's the first thing manufacturers tell you is ventilation. So you're going to have some type of open stepping. You're going to need to put rails up. I mean, if you're going to go over something, but 36 inches is basically what it takes. That's the basic minimum to get through, and that's just a straight shot. So, I mean, that's what I got.
I say we stick it on the roof.
Well, a lot of houses that have that limited access on one side, most people wouldn't limit the access to their backyard on both sides. If you're putting this stuff on one side and you've cut down your access, you probably have access that isn't in your setback on the other side, so you can get to your backyard. So if they had an emergency, they probably have more than 3 feet on the other side if they're encroaching on, say, on the north side. The south side has some room. I mean, that's a case by case, but you start talking about access, and this is closing down access to the backyard. If they've done that on one side, you would think that they had enough sense to have access from the other side. It may not be the drive-through, but at least you could walk through it.
Well, I get going back to Will's point about all of this. You don't know whether somebody's good common sense took over in the dark in an emergency, when somebody's trying to get through an area. I keep going back for myself. I keep going back to something that I have said many times during all these conversations is, for me, the real issue in all of this is that builders want to allow purchasers to put in bigger houses than what the UDO currently allows. Even Mr. Alt said at last week's meeting, if you want a house bigger than will fit on a 75-foot lot, then you should have bought a bigger lot. I don't interpret it as a hardship, as it's been described, to go before the Board of Adjustments. For me, it's a builder's responsibility to explain city ordinance to buyers, and then, as Fred has alluded to before, get creative with the placement of the mechanicals. I mean, just so that, and I'm not referring to our applicant, I'm just referring generically, so that a builder can automatically, if someone picks, for instance, packet 241 out of their portfolio, sure, it's easier for that builder and less expensive for them to just automatically go order all the things that are in package 241 and not have to do anything any different. But that's part of the builder's responsibility in all of that. I mean, our builder worked with us when we built our house for things that we wanted to do, and oftentimes explained, folks, we can't do that. that's what they're supposed to do, I believe, by their licensure. So it may cost them a bit more time and money, but I think that's part of their business cost. I agree with Fred about the conflicting information that we've gotten from the fire marshal and the chief, although I don't think it's fair to put them on the spot in public meetings for that kind of determination, but I would like to get documentation on that so that we would have that information, Mo, for what is reasonable clearance. I wish the chief were here for the Historic Preservation Commission. If he wanted to address that, he certainly could have again tonight. I think, as we've talked about a lot of this and the suggestions that came out and the options that Mo's brought up, what I keep seeing in this is, for us, the non-conforming lots are our problem. That's what ends up, inevitably going before the Board of Adjustments and claiming hardships. And again, some of them are and some of them are not hardships, just because you don't get to build lot line to lot line like you wanted to. That's not a hardship, for me anyway. I'd like for us to split up this work as we're going through all of this, and consider both conforming lots and non-conforming, and go at it from that direction so that we're creative and we're definitive about what we end up doing in all of this, so that this football does not continue to be punted back and forth. Let's just do the work. Tough as it may be, and everybody's not going to be happy, we know that. But I think we just need to do it right from the beginning. Some of the options, some of the things you've put together, Mo, I think are good. I think it's gotten confusing for everybody, frankly. Mo and I talked a bit the other day, and I said, do we need to do a field trip where we just go around and look at some of these examples in town? Having plans are great to look at. We've had some photographs. I'm not sure that we don't need to have that visual where we're up there looking at it. So I would suggest that we split this up for conforming and non-conforming lots so that we can get that addressed once and for all. What does everybody else think about going that direction?
Yeah, I can agree with that. The non-conforming lots is going to be the toughest point, and most people don't seem to realize this. But have y'all ever been behind the smokehouse? Those buildings back there, those were houses that people used to live in on non-conforming lots. They were moved up there and renovated, and shops were made. So when they say it's a hardship to squeeze this house they want to it, people raise families with 5 and 6 kids in those things. So that to me was a bigger hardship than 2 people living in a house that takes up the whole lot and goes up 30 feet in the air. But I mean, I know what people want, and I don't want to infringe on what they want whatsoever, but we do need to, the non-conforming lots is probably the biggest drawback we have. The conforming lots, we can come up with something on that relatively easy, I think, but the non-conforming, we do need to split that up because, like I said, it is non-conforming, and they're so unique that yeah, we need to come up with a standard on that. So yeah.
Would everybody agree that we continue this discussion and again give Mo your suggestions about what we can include in this rewrite? Mo, should we have, since I think the non-conforming is going to be the bigger snafu, the bigger problem in all this, should we have a committee that just works on non-conforming? Would that help you?
If that's your pleasure, that would be appropriate for something like this, I think, at this point, since it's gone so far. It would be appropriate to have a committee just look at that, to find some options, to be able to brainstorm. Yes.
So does everybody agree that might be a good thing for suggestions for the conforming lots? I mean, and taking the, like I say, the emergency personnel into consideration in all of this, understanding that the chief's already said for him 2 feet doesn't get it. So if we're looking at 3 feet, 4 feet again for that, and a 4 foot encroachment, I'll go ahead and tell you that's personally my preference for the conforming lots, to look at that, to allow that and have, a clearance to the property line. But is there anybody that would want to volunteer to work on the non-conforming committee? You actually get to be non-conforming in your life. That's right. Okay.
Madam Chairman, I would volunteer.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. And Will has volunteered to do this too. Fred, Mr. Builder, yes? So we've got a committee of 3 now, Will, Kevin, and Fred to work on this. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your help with that. And everyone else, get your suggestions to Mo. We can help staff out with suggestions for a rewrite for that.
And may I have a point of clarification? There are conforming lots that only have a 6 foot setback. So that is going to be something we need to consider too. So think about that. So because in a lot of the PUDs, they have a different setback than the standard 8 foot for a regular R10 setback for the side setbacks.
And I would say too that members can get up with you, Mo, as they're thinking this through, to ask questions about this. You're always gracious to let us be able to get up with you about that. So thank you, gentlemen. We'll get that set.
So back to the scenario you just brought up, Mo, with the PUD with the 6 foot setbacks. It just becomes a design challenge, a design solution to work around it. It needs to go back to safety first, whatever the fire department says.
Yes, I just wanted to remind everyone that it's not as cut and dry at 4 and 8. Yeah.
Madam Chairman.
Donnie, go ahead.
We're talking on most of these lots on the west side that's having problems with the setbacks and all.
You're talking about non-conforming lots, or what was in the application?
Lots, with side setbacks with equipment. Are they mostly on the west side?
I don't know what's come before the Board of Adjustments in all of this, Mo.
There hasn't been one come to the Board of Adjustment for a variance, I apologize. So, but I would say that the smaller lot sizes are all within the downtown area. It is on the west side, so
yeah,
downtown.
The 33-foot lots.
Yes. Downtown, up North Caswell.
That's all I needed. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Donnie.
Are 33-foot wide lots non-conforming because they are legal? So why are they non-conforming if they're legal?
Great point. Great point. We only have a zoning district that goes to R10, which requires a 10,000 square foot minimum lot size and a 75-foot lot frontage. So therefore, that automatically brings these 33-foot lots considered or become legal non-conforming lots that can be built on, but have different standards within the UDO. So there are already exceptions for setback, setback minimums, and like, we do the setback encroachments for those as well. So 10,000 square feet is the smallest, so that turns all of the smaller lots throughout the city. And they are not all on the west side. There are some right here on the river that don't meet the width, that also meet that requirement. So this is a challenge that we have. Correct.
We're just going to keep having fun with this, aren't we? We're learning. I appreciate that. We all continue to learn about this. So we'll get suggestions to Mo, and we'll arrange for the committee to meet and start work on that information. Thank you so much for that. We don't usually take comment, but I'll go ahead and take it.
Please use your microphone.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm an architect and I run into this myself. When you look at non-conforming lots, please make sure you look at not only that lot, but the lot next door. Because if the big issue is safety, and if this guy that you're going to give a variance to or whatever, gets really close, he could jeopardize the neighbor next door in the event of a fire. So it really does need to be looked at almost on a case-by-case basis. That's my opinion. I'll shut up.
Please, one more. Did the aldermans request for us to look at anything else other than should we compromise?
You're saying they said, should we compromise?
Isn't that what I heard, that they suggested that?
No, that was my comment based on an alderman's response, a statement that was made during the meeting.
Okay.
That how many times have you tried to compromise with these people?
Okay, I just want to say that I don't think we tried to compromise with an individual applicant, but I think this committee went out of its way trying to find compromises that would work. How many times did we go over this? And always there was something else. But we all tried to find something that would be a good compromise. And you're getting back to the non-conforming lots. So maybe that's the direction we need to go in. But we spent a lot of time on this simple request right here before we said no, thank you. That's all I have to say.
And that was my point. It was for the betterment of the entire city, not one applicant's situation or request for what they might be getting into in their own company. So yes, it was for everyone's benefit in the city. Trying to do the right thing for everybody is what we're trying to do in all of this. Okay, let's move on, folks, to new business. Item number 1 is a PUD rezoning and master development plan, Turtle Bay. It's on page 77, folks, of your packets. And Mo, let me also comment on this. It was also said at last week's meeting, this time by the mayor, that whatever comes before the planning board requesting a change from R20 to R10 is done. You can hear that at the 3-hour, 48-minute mark in the meeting tape. I haven't researched that for documentation, but I don't believe that to be a fact. I believe this board looks at the surrounding zoning and other factors for a particular area and applies the UDO consistently and fairly with staff's recommendations and common sense application. This isn't an R20 to R10 request, but I did want to make that clarification. Mo, if you'll do our staff report for this, and then we'll welcome a representative for the project for discussion and any questions from members.
Yes, so this is Jackson Starling on behalf of Turtle Bay at Southport is here this evening requesting approval, as you said, of a master development plan and a rezoning from an R20 highway commercial to a planned unit development or a PUD. So the master development plan is the proposal is a 100-lot gated community on approximately 54 acres in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, which is just north of Rob Gandy Boulevard on Highway 87. The process for a planned unit development requires the amendment to the zoning map in conjunction with the approval of a master development plan, which you have with you in your application packet. So the master development plan that is brought forward gives dimensional standards and follows the UDO and their standards that are required for the master development plan. And then the requirement itself and the process is the same as a regular zoning change. So the planning board will review the rezoning itself and master plan to make sure that it meets the standards of the UDO. Then they will provide a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. There will be a public hearing for the Board of Aldermen, and then they will make a recommendation or a decision at that point. Once there is a decision rendered and it's an approval, then the project will have to come back through for a major subdivision preliminary plat process. So that is where a lot of the more of the detailed information for the subdivision itself would be considered. And that again would be a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen, a public hearing, and then the Board of Aldermen would have a decision to make then. Then you'd have your infrastructure and final plats, and so that is the process that's going to be going from this point forward. So at this point we're looking at the requirements for the planned unit development, which is found in Article 4 of the UDO. So I just want to give you some background information. So this is the property here with the star, the 54 acres. This is Walmart. Here is Rob Gandy for it. And then this is the intersection of 87 and 211. So the property is within a portion of the property also is within the county jurisdiction. There's just a section right in this area. So once there is an approval rendered to the Board of Aldermen, then they will come forward with an annexation petition. They have got that process started as well. So as you can see, it is zoned R20, and along the road itself is highway commercial. The future land use map has low density residential with high intensity commercial. So that is inconsistent with the future land use map for this change. So the future land use map will be changed in conjunction with this zoning request. And the General Statutes 160 allows this, states that if the zoning amendment is adopted and the action is inconsistent with the adopted plan, the zoning amendment has the effect of also amending the future land use map and the approved plan, and no other additional request or application is required. So the plan amendment and the zoning amendment may be considered concurrently. So at the same time the zoning change will be made, the future land use map would be updated to say, to remove the heavy commercial, and it would then all be low density residential. So this is the master development plan that all PUDs must comply with for section 4.7, the required improvements. So they must go through the required improvements for section 4.7, which includes streets, street lights, traffic control signs and mail kiosks, pedestrian facilities, water and sewer supply, erosion and sedimentation, easements and stormwater control, and recreation and open space. So on this plan that you have received, and the engineer has brought us some larger plans for you to also take a look at. The dimensional requirements for a planned unit development, you must be over 25 acres in the ETJ, and this is for approximately 54 acres. And the overall density of the subdivision is 1.85 dwelling units per acre. which meets the maximum density, so it's under the maximum density of the 6 dwelling units per acre. And there are 10.88 acres of open space, which just meets the 20% requirement for all planned unit developments. The minimum lot size is 12,000 square feet with a minimum width of 75 feet. The setbacks requested are 10-foot front, 15-foot rear, and side yards of 8 feet. There's a utility feet of 10 feet along all side lot lines, which provides the 10-foot building setback for primary and accessory structures that required. And there is also a periphery boundary setback of 25 feet, so no primary or accessory structures can be located in that buffer as well. So moving forward with this, so I have outlined in the your staff report how all of the standards for section 4.7 have been met, and I know that Jackson has, excuse me, a presentation as well, so he'll be going through a lot of these as well. So I'm not going to go through every one exactly so that we aren't overlapping a lot of the same information. One thing that I did want to touch on, there was a traffic impact analysis done that shows that it'll be just over 1,000 daily trips. And the recommendation from the state was to construct a southbound right turn lane on NC 87 with 100 feet of storage and with an appropriate deceleration and taper, to construct a northbound left turn lane on 87 with the same 100 feet of storage and appropriate deceleration and taper, and then construct the driveway according to the NC DOT standards. And this recommendation has been included as part of the project on the site, on the master development plan, as you can see here. And I know he's got that improvement on his as well. So, and this is just an example. This is the preliminary landscaping plan that it was not required as part of the submittal that they did give us to give us an idea of kind of the overall landscaping plan, which also outlines the street yard buffer that's required for this type of development to move forward. So the mitigation plan and tree survey would then be taken care of at the major subdivision preliminary plat process. So with that, I will turn it over to Jackson and let him go through some of more of the specifics for you, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So if you will, Jackson, and this is the button you'll be pushing to get you forward, okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for everybody for having me here tonight, and thank you for your time. My name is Jackson Starling. I'm with East Coast Engineering here on behalf of Turtle Bay at Southport that unfortunately could not be here tonight. Mo, thank you so much for the introduction. We're going to overlap a little bit, but that's okay. So the site is located between NC 211 and Highway 87. As Mo mentioned, it's on the outer fringes of the ETJ. The site is currently vacant. It's been managed over the years, kind of thinned out with a portion of the timber, but then there's some portions of the site that have never received any kind of thinning. Site area, 54 acres. Jurisdiction, it is in the ETJ. Current zoning is R20, 20,000 square foot minimum lot size, and a strip of highway commercial along the road. What we're proposing is a planned unit development because the flexibility it will give us in laying out this site, and we'll kind of go over some of those aspects as we work through the PowerPoint here. We're proposing 100 single-family lots, which winds us up at 1.85 units per acre. As Mo mentioned, we can go up to 6 units an acre, but we are well below that. So when we looked at this tract of land, initially with the developer, we looked at the land use plan that the town of Southport provided. Strip along the road along Highway 87 is designated for heavy commercial, but the majority of the site is designated for future land use of low density residential. Looking through the description of the heavy commercial and the land use designation gives, some appropriate uses, inappropriate uses. Obviously, when you hear single family and heavy commercial, those two don't jive. But what I did want to point out here is that these are usually designated in like a node along major intersections, and that node shifts over time. So right at your intersection, you're going to have your gas stations, your retail, things that are going to experience a high volume of traffic. The land use plan does note that area is not static. It is due to change over time. And just wanted to point out that the area just to the south of the border of our property is still, get back a slide here. So the area to the south, that swath that is heavy commercial, actually exists right now as single family residences. So that's just kind of gives you an idea of how that shifted, over time to single family residential. So the land use plan also goes further to say, what classifies and what is appropriate for the low density residential area. Obviously single family, and it goes on to say planned unit developments. The allowable density that it quotes is 2 to 3 units per acre. Again, at 1.85 units per acre, we are well below that. So part of the reason we went with planned unit development rather than your typical subdivision approval is the flexibility it gives us with lot size, with different types of requirements. But one thing that it does push us into is preserving more open space throughout the community. So your typical subdivision, I think for 100 lots, you would multiply that by 0.02, you'd be reserving somewhere around 2 acres of open space. So with the PUD that we're proposing, we are looking at 20% of the total site area, 10.82 acres, which we were providing 10.88 acres. That does not include any wetlands, any open space, or any open surface area of the proposed stormwater pond. If that was included, which I know it's not counted that way, we would be providing about 16 acres of open space. One item we really worked hard with town staff, and I appreciate Mo's diligence working with me, is the unity and the connectivity of all the open space. So we have one large area of open space where our mail kiosk is going to be, where we're going to have some gazebos, some sitting areas, that makes up about 51% of the required open space. But since that is somewhat segmented, from the other 2 open spaces 2 and 3, we wanted to provide some type of, obvious connectivity, not just a small corridor, where you walk in between, somebody's house. We wanted to provide something a little more substantive than that. So if you look here, plan you've seen before, and highlighted in orange is your actual sidewalk network and your multi-use path system. The UDO does require, if we're only going to do sidewalks on one side of the street, that they have to be 8 foot wide. 8 feet wide is a very large sidewalk, can accommodate people passing on bikes back and forth, walking, really encourages the walkability of the subdivision. Our multi-use paths do have to be 8 foot wide as well, but they do not have a requirement on the surfacing. So they could have been sand, or they could have been gravel, mulched, slightly improved. What the client told me is they really want, this to be a community that does encourage that walkability, so we went with concrete throughout, which brings up some stormwater design issues, but we can accommodate those. So back to open space 1, where I mentioned the mail kiosk will be located. So you come to one spot to get your mail. It's required by the local postmaster. I've got an image here showing you what an 8 foot wide sidewalk does look like. Again, it's wide enough for any type of activity you would like to do out there. We do have some amenities specified out. This community is supposed to be geared more towards the retirement community, so we're not doing the pools, the tennis courts. We're looking more towards the active leisure. So again, the trail system, the gazebos, the lookout points. Open Space 3 is centered around the proposed stormwater pond. This is the lowest area of the site. We have a small bridge that's going to go over the existing wetlands there to again provide a little bit more connectivity from lots 53, 54, on to the trail system there behind the stormwater pond. Another aspect that the client brought to my attention was, we want to show that it's very clear where this connectivity is. We really don't want to go out there and stripe the ground to show, hey, this is a crosswalk. What they brought to my attention was they want to put in these 10-foot wide brick paver crosswalks. Going to be bordered, in concrete, but it's going to clearly delineate where this trail system goes and delineates to, any cars, motorists in the neighborhood that, this is a potential crossing here. Tree mitigation on this site, I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. The site has been managed over the past, but there are a substantial amount of hardwoods on this site. So when we first looked at it, we tried to take in the natural topography and the existing heritage trees of the site. And what we found was that there's a natural drainage, it's not a swale, just a drainage pattern that goes through the site, and most of our hardwoods were located along this drainage swale. So what we did is we tried to lay out the site in such a way that we, one, preserve the drainage of the site, but two, preserve this natural buffer and all these heritage trees, and try to preserve as much of that as we can. So you can kind of see here between 63 and 64. It's a little unclear, but you can see the contours, how it really drops off. Got all these sweet gums, basket oaks, water oaks. All these are going to be preserved. Within the right-of-way, you can see with the red X's, what trees are going to eventually be taken out just with the infrastructure of the right-of-way. So we work closer to the stormwater pond. Again, you see the natural drainage area, the drainage swale, the drainage way. All the hardwoods, located along that area. Again, maintaining the natural drainage of the site, not to interrupt any of the ecological systems surrounding, but also, again, saving the heritage trees. Even with the exhaustive layout redesigns, we went back and forth through, trying to keep in mind, how much the client was going to have to put up front, with capital cost of putting back in the trees that they took out. We're going to be putting back 2,556 inches of trees. Looking at the landscape design plan on this, it's about 850 trees, ranging anywhere from 2.5 to 3 inch caliper all the way up to, we're proposing some 7-inch caliper live oaks along the entrance drive. One of the additional items we looked at with this subdivision is we cut the streets a little lower than the existing grade of the lots. So when this infrastructure is installed and these homeowners do go to build on their lots, they don't have to come in and bring all this fill and inevitably kill trees. It doesn't matter if you're going to cut them down or not. If you put 3 feet of fill on a lot, leave the tree there, it's going to kill it eventually. So another effort that we took to try to preserve the natural heritage trees on the site. Mo kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. The proposed lot size, we are going for, from R20 to this PUD, we are requesting a 12,000 square foot minimum lot size. The smallest lot we do have in our subdivision is proposed at 12,060 square feet. 10-foot front setbacks, 8 foot on the sides, and a 15-foot rear setback. The only exception will be lots 38 through 53 that are on the peripheral, the boundary of the site. Those will be a 25-foot building setback. One interesting comment about this builder, they do not clear cut. Like we said, we cut the roads a little bit lower than the street so that you have that natural drainage. You don't have to bring in the amount of fill to get it to drain to the street. They actually hand cut their lots. They don't go in and clear cut. And as part of the landscaping plan to get the mitigation of all the trees that we're removing, it's going to be required that 4 3-inch caliper trees are planted on each lot at the time of building. Okay. The demographic that this client or the developer aims to cater to is the retirement community. These are all going to be single-level house plans, as they've done with other subdivisions in this area and all over, is that they have one landscaping contract, not only to take care of the right-of-way area, but the lots themselves. So this is not a community you have to worry about being overgrown or looking, untidy at any time. Again, providing the large amount of walking trails throughout to promote the walkability of the site. And again, it's located on the outer fringes of town, but close enough for the community to explore the shopping, sightseeing, and the history of Southport. Just to give you an idea of what types of house plans they have lined up, the builder will be Premier Homes. It'll be a single builder. I know the town has had their fill with your Bill Clarks, your Pulte's, your D.R. Hortons in the past. This is not that style of developer. If you want an example of what they're building, the home place at Southport, just as you're going back up 211 out of town, just as you go over the Outfall Canal, the first subdivision there on the left, that is Premier Homes building there. So a little bit larger homes. Mentioned the entrance landscaping, again, not required at this stage, but we wanted to give you an idea of what type of product we're wanting to provide. Here you see the entrance landscaping. You've got a landscaped median in the middle with a provided turnaround because we do have a gate, a gated entrance there. This is where those 4 large southern live oaks will be, in addition to a large number of other plantings. You can see the different types of signs that they're proposing as well. And my client is a very firm believer in that mature vegetation that you can retain, your heritage trees, in addition to your plantings that you put on the site, really increase not only the curb appeal, but the sellability of the lot. So moving from landscaping to buffering, I've got a picture of the landscaping plan and a mirroring picture of the existing aerial that I pulled from Brunswick GIS. Basically along lots 1 through 10, which is the southern border of the subdivision, there is a minimum 40-foot distance between the back of these lot lines and the actual boundary of the site. As you can see along the southern border, that is existing pretty heavily treed. We're proposing to leave every single one of those trees through there unless we find one that's diseased, has to be taken down. In addition to that, to meet tree mitigation, we're planting 47 3-inch caliper trees along the back of those lot lines. So anything on the other side of that is going to have a nice buffer of 40 plus feet and not be looking into a newly graded subdivision. It should be noted, though, there is no buffer required between both highway commercial and highway commercial, or R20 and R20, which is what the zoning is to the south of the property. The buffering on the western portion of the site borders predominantly vacant land. You've got a lot of highway commercial and I think one tract that's zoned R20. Buffering not only what's adjacent to us, but the homes that we're planning on building, we're including a large amount of our open space area within that western portion. None of those trees are proposed to be removed, and in addition, you can see the large amount of plantings that we'll be putting back in that area. Again, those properties are vacant now, so if someone came in with a heavier, more intensive commercial use, they would be responsible for providing that amount of buffer on their side of the property. Go to the northern portion of the site. That property to the north of this subdivision, or this site, is currently owned by Duke Progress Energy. It's not currently in conservation, but I don't know that there are or is the ability to build on. Right now it serves as a buffer to the Outfall Canal from Duke's power plant. So there is a natural buffer there, hopefully in perpetuity, but that can't be guaranteed. But again, there's no buffer required there per the UDO. The two parcels along Highway 87 there are both zoned. One of them is actually in the county's jurisdiction. It's CLD, which would translate to your highway commercial. And then the property to the south that's not cleared is highway commercial and business district. Again, no buffer required between the two, but along lots 52 and 53, along with the 25-foot periphery boundary setback, we are also proposing a 25-foot buffer in that location. I think there's a proposed RV park or RV storage on the lot that's cleared, and I think there's an existing animal hospital on the lot that has not been cleared. The portion of the animal hospital that is not called out to be buffered, buffer kind of stops right here, is covered on the northeastern side by the large amount of open space we're going to have, the vast area of the pond, and then the additional plantings that we're going to have on the other side. The street buffer, always important in a neighborhood like this. I hate to see when I ride down the road somebody sitting on their back porch and I'm looking through sparse pines at them sitting there drinking their morning coffee. On this site, you've got lots 92 through 95. You've got about 80 to 90 feet there of what is being counted as open space. We're not going to take any of the vegetation out of that area. And I don't have the landscaping plan on this slide, but there are some additional plantings proposed in that area. So that in addition to their setbacks on their individual lots. Lots 96 through 100 have about 80 feet of street buffer. That is not counted as open space. All those trees are to remain. I've got a picture of the current street frontage there. That can be supplemented as needed. The landscape architect currently thinks that meets the street frontage requirement. That's something we'd be open definitely to discussing. And lot 1 is the smallest area of street buffer. It goes down to 20 feet, but that's largely due to DOT kind of shifting the right-of-way in that area. The back of that, or the side of that lot, is going to be more than 85 feet to the edge of the pavement, and there is existing vegetation in that area too. So it's going to be well buffered from Highway 87. Stormwater on this project, again, we talked about cutting the streets a little bit lower so that the lots will naturally drain to the street. It's going to have a typical crown section in the middle, curb and gutter. We're using valley curb on this, so it's easily, you can easily drive over it. It's not like a stand-up curb. It's going to go into your gutter system through the piping network, and it's going to be delivered to one of 2 forebays within the stormwater pond. So I have gone ahead and analyzed the pre- and post-development runoff rates with designing this pond. So what the town requires me to do as a design engineer is to look at the site before it was developed, run the 25-year storm analysis on it, and whatever that runoff is, my post-development runoff cannot exceed that at all. Not within 5%, just not at all. So we design the outlet structure, the emergency spillway, anything that drains from this pond. We basically had to size the pond big enough to capture that volume and store it for a certain amount of time and slowly release it so we can meet this pre-post requirement. As you can see with the current size of the stormwater pond, I don't have details on the stormwater outlet structure for you today, but we actually decreased the discharge from the site. The utilities provided are all going to be from Brunswick County. We plan to tap the potable water network into the 12-inch line that exists off of Highway 87. We did pass along to Chief Drew the preliminary locations of the fire hydrants. I haven't heard anything back from him yet, so I hope that he's okay with those. We'll definitely be willing to provide more or move them around as needed. The sewer, currently with the grading that we have, we've planned to serve this subdivision with a gravity sewer network and tie directly into the county's pump station on Sandy Lane, which is right there at the Murphy gas station. There's an existing interceptor manhole there that is very, very deep, in the hopes that, you know, future development would tie into that as well. On to traffic. So we all know DOT is ongoing improvements along 211. It'll be great when it gets done. I haven't heard an update on when exactly that'll be, but the widening of 211 will most certainly alleviate some of the congestion that I experience every time I come this way. Further up Highway 87, there are improvements to both Jabbertown and what's the next road up? Rob Gandy. Some additional lane widening, again, to alleviate some of that traffic from going directly to the intersection of 87 and 211. As Mo mentioned earlier, we did hire Davenport to take a look at the traffic impact analysis. They went out, did their traffic counts, and put their traffic engineers on this and submitted a analysis to the DOT, which was recently approved for the improvements. So we're going to have a northbound left turn lane with 100 feet of storage and an appropriate taper. It's a 45-mile-an-hour zone, so it won't have too much of a taper. And then a southbound right turn lane with 100 feet of storage as well. And that's what we've got shown here. So I'm sorry if I covered the same topics as Mo did a couple times, but I would be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
I have a couple questions for you. So one, why the 8-foot sidewalks? Are those going to be right in front of the residential lots, or is?
Yes, sir. So when we're proposing a subdivision, I believe it's over 20 lots, and we don't want to put sidewalks on both sides of the street. The UDO gives us the option to put an 8-foot sidewalk just on one side of the street.
Okay, I don't know that I've ever seen an 8-foot wide sidewalk in a neighborhood. It's going to be significant. Will that sidewalk butt to the curb, or will there be separation?
No, sir. So we'll still have that 3-foot plaza from back of curb to the proposed sidewalk for your landscaping in between.
So is it the same builder developer that did Home Place, or just same builder?
I know it's the same builder. Developer, I don't know if there was anyone else involved. I want to say it was the same developer.
Okay, because when I know that's county, and so it did not come through us, and so I only know what I observe as I ride by, but it looks to me like that was just clear cut.
Different regulations. The county does not have the tree mitigation to the level that Southport does. And I'm with you on Southport's tree mitigation. I don't like clear cutting either.
Okay, and are there any specimen trees that haven't been cut that will be preserved on any of the residential lots, or?
There's a lot. I have the landscaping plan here.
At the rezoning level, we do not have to have a full survey. I mean, you can ask this question, but and that's fine. I'm just reminding.
Yeah, so if you look at L1, the first landscaping plan in your little bit larger packet that I provided, it's kind of hard to see, not on a 24 by 36 plan. The circles with a dot in the middle are proposed, and then the very much smaller dots are existing trees. I'd be happy to send you a larger copy that you can review. But there's a significant amount of trees that are going to be retained, and that's kind of why we wanted to cut the streets lower, because I always see the issue of, okay, well, you designed it to where the lots flow to the street. Well, that takes a significant amount of fill. Then you're cutting trees that you don't really need to cut. We cut the street a little bit lower. It naturally drains. All we've got to do is go behind, your curbs, put a little French drain system in, dewater that water table just a little bit to keep it from percolating through your road subgrade, but really enhances the existing mature vegetation of the site, and then the builder can go in, hand cut, and build around them.
Got, well, and you kind of touched on that for a second there, but Sandy Lane, now that comes out in front of Walmart, and is there, and what I'm looking at is, I know you got to have two entrances, but was there any consideration of trying to tap into that as a roadway? Because in that way, you've got something with a stoplight, but it comes out on the other side rather than have traffic come around. And it can go, they can kind of pick in the subdivision which side they want to come out on. And I know it will take a little bit of road improvement, but like I said, there is a light there, and it does give an alternate means rather than two roads that are side by side almost.
Sure. So we definitely looked at Sandy Lane. There was a couple constraints that we looked at. So you can kind of see the existing wetlands here, this green area here. So we tried to minimize our wetland impacts, obviously, to fit the 24-foot road through there. We're definitely, with the fill slope and everything, we're going to be pushing into that wetland. Another design constraint, well, two, the width of the existing right-of-way along Sandy Lane is only 30 feet, so it doesn't give us much, room to, if the county came back and asked us to loop that water line, we're really getting close with our utilities. I know there's a lot of force mains that are tied into this system currently, so it would be an engineering challenge to get that water through there. The last thing is just it's not the best entrance. If you're going to allow that to be your entrance, I showed you the landscaping plan on the entrance. That's what we want. We want the grand landscaped, southern live oaks as you come in. Not so much, obviously the road would be improved, but you're looking at a pump station on the left, gas station here. It's just it's a different entrance. So we did certainly try to make that connection, because it does make sense to have the light there a little bit more on the traffic safety side. And then we coordinated again with Chief Drew on the secondary entrance, which is just a emergency vehicle access. Your siren operation. Nobody from the subdivision is going to be able to just travel through it freely.
Go ahead, Donnie.
Got a question. I was looking here at this figure 3 existing lane geometry. It shows from Highway 211 to Rob Gandy 1,400 feet. Isn't there something missing between Rob Gandy and 211?
Are we referring to the traffic improvement plan by the DOT?
Yeah, Jabbertown Road is included in that because Ace Hardware and Brown's Chapel Church and some more places, including access getting down to the chemical plant, comes off that road, and I was wondering why it wasn't on there.
Right. So I wish you were here tonight, because I've got a slideshow that I'm sure Mo would be happy to share with you. So I've got the DOT improvements pulled up right now on the slide, and it shows Jabbertown Road having basically a right out only, sending traffic up Highway 87 rather than towards the intersection.
You said it was a right only?
It's a right out only. I don't believe so. So it looks like there's only a right out. And then
I know it's traffic can either go left or right into it, and coming out on Jabbertown Road there on the west side, it goes either left or right also.
I'd have to get a clarification from the DOT. The plan I'm looking at now, it appears to be a right out as you're traveling from Jabbertown to 87. And then as you're traveling up 87 towards Jabbertown, it's a right in only.
But there's no left turns off of Jabbertown Road.
That's the plan I'm looking at now from the DOT, and again, I'd have to get a little clarification, does not show a left turn.
Yeah, because they do turn left now, so the left turn out, I think that goes to 211.
I think you're correct, yes, sir. And part of that
I'm
improved.
just checking.
If Mo, if you can get the slideshow to Donnie so he can see that, and then we can get some clarification on that as well, that'd be great. Thank you. What other questions? I'm sorry, Donnie.
I think, yeah, that would be appreciated because I'm sure that Ace Hardware would, if it's just a right only, Ace Hardware would not be too happy with that.
Okay, thank you. Any other question for Mr. Starling or Mo?
I have a question for Mo. So, let's see. Oh, my question is, so when this is presented to, so if the planning board were to approve this, is there anything, they're checking all the boxes, is there basically anything that won't be able to stop it? And I'm also thinking of any public opposition to where there's another 100 homes going into Southport. So are all the guidelines being met that it's very likely it'll have to be approved?
All of the guidelines have been met. This is a legislative decision, but since it is a rezoning, so, you know, you have the ability to make some different, it's not a administrative like a subdivision would be. So you do have some things to consider, absolutely. But they have met, the standards that are laid out in the UDO have been met, yes.
Mo, do you have any idea how many houses, if it stayed R20, could be put in there?
I didn't do the math.
I think it's about 78 at R20, 78 to 80 in there with the calculation at R20. So we're looking at 22, say 78, we're looking at 22 additional units, but you're gaining 10 plus acres of open space, which is way more than that's required in R20. Anything else?
I have one more. Are there any other examples besides Home Place that this developer has done where they did not clear cut and a similar quality of development?
So I know he's given me a couple of developments. I don't know that any of them are in an area that require the type of tree mitigation. Again, you know, the Home Place at Southport, it's a good quality product what they're building. I like the landscaping they're putting in up front. They did clear cut. That's something the county does not regulate, and it was easier for them to develop without it. I think another one that they have done is Mott's Landing. I believe that's towards Wilmington. And I'm not sure of their tree ordinance. And I haven't personally been boots on the ground to see that site.
How do you spell that?
Mott's, M-O-T-T-S.
Any other questions or comments? Go for it.
It's an excellent plan, and I don't say that lightly, okay? I think y'all are doing a good job to try. I'm sorry to see another 100 families coming to Southport, but that's just the way it has to be too. You've heard the comments about clear cutting. And I would ask that y'all look very closely. And I understand most of those trees out there individually are scrub trees, but as a cluster, they look well. I like what you've done about lowering the streets and using the natural drainage, so you don't have to satisfy some federal regulation for getting all the water in one spot. You're doing it more naturally. I would ask y'all, as you go forward, to look very carefully at looking at closer at seeing how you can keep from clear cutting, because Southport is very serious about it, and I think y'all are doing, under the existing regulations, you're doing well. But I would ask that y'all go back, like the back property lines. I mean, I think if y'all could show good faith and show a better plan, which you will do, on what trees, what existing trees, cluster of trees, lines of trees can be, will be here when you're through with houses, with utilities, with walks and everything. I think that'll go a long ways towards what Southport is looking for with this tree ordinance and all. I love the fact that it was brought up that try to get out on 211. I understand why you did. That would also mean another gate and another that. But the other one thing that brought up that Donnie suggested, and we saw on NCDOT, which has nothing to do with you, but somehow NCDOT has decided they're going to destroy Jabbertown and Ace Hardware. And I didn't see that. I've never seen this plan before. And I think somehow the city needs to start talking to DOT about that intersection with Jabbertown right now. And I don't know how we do that. And right out and right in only on Jabbertown would help Jabbertown itself, but it would destroy that existing business there. It would. So that's something outside of this presentation that needs to be looked at. That would mean if I went to Ace Hardware, I could get in there, but I couldn't get out except going up 87. And that's just something. DOT needs to be a little bit more sensitive to the needs of the community. That's all I have to say. Thank you for the presentation.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Starling. We appreciate your time. It's a thorough presentation.
Thank you very much for y'all's time.
And now, Mo, I want to reiterate, as far as our requirements in the UDO, this meets it.
Yes,
All the boxes are checked.
correct.
And we spoke a minute ago when Scott brought it up about how many houses could be there right now, could be brought in right now, basically by right with the zoning that exists there. So we're looking at more houses, but more open space as well than what would be allowed by R20. And we agree, open space is what we're after as we look at growth in the town. So their open space meets our requirement for contiguous areas. It allows for walking paths and a park in the community, and I think connectivity and a sense of neighborhood is part of our goals as well. And that stormwater pond up front, even though it's functional, it's going to be an attractive area for the front of a subdivision as well. And, you know, I go back to saying the owner has rights to use their property too. You know, we always talk about that when getting bothered or groups getting upset about the potential of more houses come in. Large tract property owners have rights too, and obviously we have to consider that all in. I'm not saying, not going either way on this, but we have to remember that in all of this as well. Any other comments or questions for Mo? And if not, what's the board's pleasure on this?
So it looks like, to me, around the perimeter, those are all smaller lots. Is there going to be, I guess, more low-income type housing around in the perimeter in those smaller lots? And the interior lots, the more expensive ones? Talking here, here, here.
Yeah, so these here are your typical 12,060 square feet or 90 foot on
Yeah,
the front.
yeah.
And 134 in the back. There's no,
I see that.
There's no low income.
Yeah.
Housing proposed.
Yeah,
This is mostly just retirement.
yeah, yeah, okay.
So for Kevin and Donnie, if you could, if that mic didn't pick up well, the question that he asked, the answer from Mr. Starling is no, there's no differentiation in those perimeter lots to be a different type housing for those. It's the same throughout the community. Okay, thank you. So folks, what's our pleasure on this? Do I hear a motion that we approve this PUD application, rezoning, and the master development plan for forwarding on to the Board of Aldermen? Do you want to review it, revisit it in March?
Yes.
Go, Roy, did you want to hit your button?
Are there any specific elements that we want to review for a month?
I think Donnie wanted to look over the DOT plan.
Yeah.
He had some reservations.
Someone talking to me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I would like to revisit that in March because I'd like to get a chance to look at more about how Javatown Road is now on the west side is going to be right turns only. Because that is a very sharp, as soon as you get from 211, you can throw a 10-year-old can throw a baseball from Javatown Road to 211. So it's very short. Yes, I would like to revisit this in March. It gives us a little time to look at everything because, like I said, I don't think Ace Hardware is going to be too happy with this.
But this is a DOT issue, not a developer issue.
Right, I understand what.
Mr. Starling, did you want to address something else?
Again, I really appreciate the comment and definitely understand the concern. Just want to reiterate what some of your board members have said, and that, you know, while it does hold bearing on our project and the ultimate finished product, it is not tied to what we're proposing here today. And all the improvements stop well south of where our proposed, you know, entrance to the subdivision will ultimately take place.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Donnie, and however, it is a NCDOT design solution that I don't think many people have ever noticed. And somehow, it's not it's not this development. It's a city, Jabbertown problem. So how can we separate the two and do everything we can to review Jabbertown, that revision there? That's a question.
As far as I know, I don't think that that is a revision to Jabbertown. Well, we're gonna have to, I'm happy and we'll definitely go back and look at the plans. This just happened to be part of the plans that have been in place for these improvements that have nothing to do with the improvements that are being done with this project. But as I said, I would be happy to look and see if there have been any recent changes to this intersection for some reason and find out. So I don't know the date on that map, so we'd have to look that up.
Well, I think we have sufficient questions, enough for me to say then, do I hear a motion to table discussion of this PUD application for additional consideration or staff comments for return to us at our March meeting? Folks, I need a motion one way or the other.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Scott.
I'll second.
Thank you, Will. We have a motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Mo, if we can look at if that was something maybe that was included, I don't know if that was in the traffic study part or if it was something that we can reach out to DOT about to get information on that so we can clear that up. And again, if you can get those slides to Donnie so he can see what was brought out in discussion, that would be great. And Kevin as well, please, since
absolutely, I'll send them to the full board.
We'll just send it to everybody.
Excuse me, I apologize. I don't know, maybe my phone, but can someone, the motion that was just on the floor that passed, could you read that one back to me where I could hear it?
Yes, sir. I'll do it, Donnie. Since there are sufficient questions and information that we want to get on this, I ask for a motion to table discussion of this PUD application, rezoning, and master development for additional consideration or staff comments for return to us at our March meeting.
Okay, so it was tabled for until next month.
That is correct.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you, Mo. Appreciate that. Okay, our next item under new business was added to our agenda. Number 2, we're going to discuss expansion. Thank you, Mr. Starling, for being with us. Expansion of the business district. Mr. Fisk.
So this is just meant to be a discussion, thinking out loud. Initially, I said there were 2 parcels, and looking at the zoning map, it looks like there's more parcels that are in highway commercial. For example, the Walgreen, and then the little nondescript building next door to the Walgreen that was maybe a Walgreen years ago, I think. So all those are highway commercial, including across the street, the land that I believe is owned by Bald Head Limited. Basically across from the Truist Bank. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? So to me, that's where our town begins. I know we're making effort to try to have a consistent corridor into town, but the way it is right now, I could put up a 40-foot tall glass hotel on either side there, and my discussion would be, is that the way we would like our town to look? And it could, and I just wanted everyone to consider it, trying to be proactive in what we want Southport to look like. And so it seems to me it may be appropriate to look at that as being part of the business district. And the highway commercial would begin with Go Gas and Truist going back north. So I just wanted to bring that possibility up because it could be interesting what unfolds there. So what does anybody else think about that?
Well, we just had that zoning request to make all that area highway commercial with mixed use. Now, of course, we shot that down, but I could see it as highway commercial, but with the mixed use, then we're looking at, you know, that of course would have been probably a disaster. But I can definitely see where you're coming from on that. And I would actually say on the other side of the intersection as well would probably be, because you got to consider Robert Ruark. So if you've got highway commercial right beside Robert Ruark, that so we may look at it even just a little bit further. I'm not sure how we could do that.
So I don't have any idea if the value of highway commercial land is more valuable than business district zoning. But my understanding is if this did make sense to look at this, then it would have to be put out or notified to the owners of those parcels, and then there would be public discussion and everything else. But so I think it would be a good thing to at least consider it, and I'm just looking to start a conversation.
I agree. Mo, can you talk to us about the process that this would take?
Sorry. So this would be taken care of just like any other zoning, but there would have to be notification to the property owners that the city was looking at this. So it would be a broader, but since it's more of a broad-based rezoning. So you would bring it forward or you would request staff to look into the change, notify the property owners, and then bring it back as a rezoning on the planning board for a recommendation, and then move forward like a regular zoning change.
Now, to Will's point, and I guess this, since we're just kind of talking about this cold, you're going to need some time to look at this as to what may be precedent that's already out there for looking at the other side of the road and how far out we might go and where would we stop.
I would love some guidance on where you would like me to start. I'm happy to look into it, and it's hard to say since it has always historically been highway commercial. So to say where to start and stop it, yes, I agree. You're going to have to really look at a lot of factors. I'd be happy to look into several options to look. So we have, I can bring something back for further discussion. But if you have some thoughts, ideas, I know that Fred, you had mentioned just the south side of the intersection, or maybe expanding it around just so that it included the full intersection. So we can look at a couple different options to see, and if anyone finds any good property valuations, appraisals for the type of zoning that can share with me, that would be appreciative. If it exists, I don't know.
So back to that intersection, it would probably be important to review the DOT plans that they're planning there, because I think it's going to be sort of a super intersection. It's going to be quite different than it is now. From my understanding, there is no roundabout happening, even though rumors travel around town. Even at the Truist Bank, they say, and there's going to be a roundabout right there, and I'm like, I don't think so. But would need to go look at that too again, because if DOT destroys that intersection like they're like we talked about Jabbertown Road and changing that, would it make sense what I'm talking about? So
this is that intersection here. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lanes wide when it's completed. So it'll have 2 left-hand turns if you're traveling into town, 2 left-hand turns, a straight into Howe Street, and then a right on Robert Rourke. Is how this is set up. So it's going to be completely different.
Then they're eliminating the existing road, which makes that intersection, that land at the intersection larger, unless the DOT keeps that large right-of-way there. You see what they're talking about? They're making it a simple, no merging.
Right, exactly.
I love what you're saying. I've got to muddy the waters and say, would this be considered a downzoning? If it is, then you would expect the owner to raise Cain with that. Yeah. You know, it would make, downzoning is something we have to really be careful with.
Or could it be an upzoning?
It could be. What we're looking for is an angel to purchase that property and preserve it. Because it's the trees we're looking at more than anything. Is that correct?
DOT's already chopped a bunch of them down.
That's for this new intersection. But those large oaks are untouched. And that's why I wish the UDO were being revised right now, because I think public would really look at turning that into a non-buildable area. And I'm muddying the waters. I don't want to see a single one of those trees cut down. I don't want to see it. You know, is that going to be considered spot zoning if we try to go with, you know, different zoning out there? I mean, I love to muddy waters because it's going to be tough to devalue that property. I want it. I don't want to save it. I want my grandchildren to see those trees.
I understand. The trees are definitely worthy, and that's not the primary thing I'm thinking of. Okay. I'm just thinking that's your entrance into our town, and if it is developed, there probably won't be a tree left except for what's mitigated out, along the street. So I would just like to consider it.
And it makes sense to me, Mo, since we're looking at, 5 lanes that stop at Howe Street or stop at that intersection and bottleneck on down into us then, that it would make sense to me to just look at this side of it for bringing it in. But certainly I understand the considerations about what that might do to values and what the property owners there might consider in all of that. But I agree with Fred that intersection is what all of us kind of think of as the beginning of Southport itself. So whatever we can do if there's a way to impress that this is us and we're working to put that presentation out there, maybe that is something that we can look at. So let's let's just see what information we can pull together. I know you don't have anything else to do, Mo. And so just in your free time, honey, just do a quick Google and see what you can find out about that for us, okay?
Be happy to.
So one other thought, there's a lot of thoughts you could have about this, but if it was business district, then mixed use could be done there, correct? Whereas highway commercial, there's very limited that you could do with that. You'd have to live there, right? With highway commercial? Yeah.
I'll just throw something out real quick as a guidepost. If we are looking at boundaries, I would just suggest that we go no further than Rob Gandy and no further than Sandy Lane. So if we're actually looking out anywhere, outbound to those areas, that we go no further than those two. And that would, because that then provides an area to look at, not saying that would be the whole area that we would be actually considering, but it gives us an idea of what's out there and then how it tapers in to our entryway into town.
Okay, Mo. More walking orders, Shug. More walking orders. Thank you for doing that. Thank you, Fred, for bringing that up. I think we've talked about before proactivity, so I think this is a good thing. Don't leave Mo. Don't run. Do we? We'll move on into other business now, folks. Do we want to? I'll go ahead and give a quick update on the sign committee's work. We have had another meeting, and again, we had talked about having information to give the board tonight, but as I said before the meeting started, I'll say it again, Mo has two hands, and there's just a lot that she is tasked with doing, one person with two hands, so we're extending grace on that, and we will get that to the full board at the next meeting. Comp plan revision work, the committee roster is complete now, correct? And the first meeting is anticipated around the end of the month, is that right?
The first steering committee is hoping to be March 15th, and that will also be held, and we're hoping to have this stakeholder meetings on the 14th and 15th with that, in association with that. And that has been brought out. We also have the web page that on the city's website, we have the comprehensive plan web page. Thank you, Cheyenne. And on that as well, there is a survey now open to help name the comprehensive plan. So please go and check that out. If there's an idea you have in your head and you want to bring up something new that's not listed, please do. And that'll be where we will be posting the community surveys and all information and the updated schedule for the process itself.
Excellent, thank you. Now, you can sit now, thank you. Is there any additional other business to be brought before the board tonight? Hearing none, we'll advance to announcements, and I want to thank the volunteers who worked so hard for the Black History Weekend presentations. Donnie, what an education and treat for those of us that participated in that. It was excellent. We appreciate your hard work on that, Donnie. Anyone have any other announcements? All right, we'll move along. Your member information, as always, is in the back of your packet for this evening. And now, with no other business, can I get a motion, please, that we adjourn? So moved. Thank you, Will and Dick. We've had that duo going tonight. Appreciate it. Motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you so much for your time and attention. We are adjourned at 8:23.